The Quran, Hadiths, and Mohammedan scholars denigrate, insult, and attack both the followers of Moses and of Jesus in no uncertain terms in very clear Quranic Arabic verses. Why is there so much anger and hatred towards them?
Let us first begin with a fact that escapes the intellect of both the followers of Muhammad and their apologists, that it was Muhammad who was the first to attack, insult, and denigrate the religion of his own tribe and that of all of Arabia, because they did not believe his claim to be the messenger of Allah. It should be obvious that had he not done so, no one would have gone against him. Secondly, it is imperative that our listeners, both so-called believers and unbelievers, should also know that Muhammad's polemic against his pagan tribe of Quraysh was not because they did not know who or what Allah was, which of course they knew, even centuries before Muhammad, but because they associated other gods and goddesses with him. Thirdly, what conveniently escapes their intellect also is another fact that we witness almost every day in the news media of what would happen to any person in any Muhammadan Muslim country who would attack, insult, or denigrate Muhammad, Allah, or Islam. His slaughter would be instantaneous. The Quraysh, on the other hand, showed mercy to Muhammad, for which he paid them back with terror and death. The hadiths tell us about the unstinting support that Muhammad and his followers received from the Abyssinian Christians at the very and crucial beginnings of his perceived mission. They also relate how intimately involved Muhammad was with Christian encounters and influences, from the monk Bahira to Waraka bin Nawfal, his wife's Khadija's uncle, etc. Nonetheless, his assumed monotheism made him rebel against the Christians for believing that Jesus is the Son of God, as well as refusing to believe his claims for prophethood. He paid them back with slaughter, subjugation, and humiliation. According to the hadiths, Muhammad's encounters with the Judaized Arabs, who were actually pagan Arabs who had converted without coercion to the religion of the Jews, started when he ran away to Medina in 622 AD to escape his alleged persecution at the hands of his own Quraysh tribe. Up to this point, his Meccan revelations regaled his listeners with Allah's support, succor, and promise to the Israelites, their revealed Torah to Moses, and with perverted stories about Adam, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Noah, King David, and Solomon, etc., etc., none of which were aggressive or derogatory. All this changed after spending the first 16 to 18 months in Medina. The Medina harbored three Judaized Arabian tribes, the Bani Nadir, Bani Qurayza, and Bani Qaynuqa, as well as two pagan ones, the Aus and Khazraj, who came originally from the Yemen. These five tribes were associated with each other by blood alliances, as well as warring against each other, with the Judaized tribes divided in alliances between them. Being pagans, they had neither animosity nor fear of the Judaized Arabs, since the major differences were not racial or cultural, but religious and economic. The Judaized Arabs were in agriculture, manufacturing, and trading, and were generally much more literate and learned than the pagans. Because the Aus and Khazraj were intimately associated with the traditions of the Jews and had learned from them about their expected Messiah, they were hence very susceptible to Muhammad's self-declared assertions that he was the Arabian promised prophet. Hence, when they gave their unquestioning support to Muhammad, he migrated to Medina to be under their protection. Muhammad tried his best at first to ingratiate himself with the Judaized Arabs so that they would believe in him and declare him a prophet of Allah. He went so far as to fast on their Yom Kippur day, which fell on the 10th of Muharram of the pagan Arabian calendar, subsequently called Ashura, and instructed his followers to do the same. Furthermore, he oriented his face in prayers, called the Qibla, towards Al-Sham, Jerusalem, in emulation of the Jews. He incorporated several of the biblical, judicial, and moral commandments with modifications in his Quran. All his efforts failed totally in having the Judaized Arabs believe in him or his Quran, especially since the latter contained many stories and characters that contradicted and or were different from their originals in the Bible. Based upon all these historical errors and discrepancies, they knew that he was neither a messenger of Allah nor of any all-knowing divinity, and refused to change their mind even upon pain of death, which is exactly what Muhammad did to them. They infuriated him by questioning him about his alleged revelations and pointing out their inherent contradictions and inconsistencies. Several of their poets were disgusted and alarmed at his ambush of the Quraysh caravan at Badr, and the slaughter and the mutilation of the bodies of many of their leaders. They recited poems against him and his deeds. He had them assassinated by ambush and deception, although they were never a threat to him physically, but only morally. His rage at their justified refusal was similar to that of a jilted lover that required revenge. He did so both in the verses of his Quran and in the subsequent physical slaughter, forced conversion, and or subjugation and enslavement of all the Judaized tribes of the Hijaz. I must remind our listeners as many times as needed, and contrary to what the followers of Muhammad want you to believe, that the so-called Jewish and Christian tribes of Arabia were not, I repeat, were not foreigners in Arabia. They were, in fact, aboriginal native Arabians who had converted without terror or coercion from paganism to the religions of the Jews and Christians. They were Arabs in language, culture, dress, behavior, names, and affiliations. They were only different in their religions. It was Muhammad who initiated the process of alienating and destroying the cohesion of the tribal affiliations and loyalties by dividing humanity into two camps, that of the believers and that of the unbelievers. It was Muhammad who pitted sons against fathers, brothers against sisters, clans against clans, and Arabian tribes against Arabian tribes, finally ending with the current state of affairs whereby Muhammadan Muslims are against 80% of humanity. Ibn Ishaq in his Sirat Rasulullah, page 204, reports, when the people came together to plight their faith to the Apostle, Al-Abbas al-Ansari pointed out, O men of Khazraj, do you realize to what you are committing yourselves in pledging your support to this man? It is to war against all and sundry. The above hadith is remarkable because it shows that even 1400 years ago, among the most ignorant and uneducated people, there were some who realized the enormity of the future consequences of following Muhammad's dictates. Tabari 8.130. The messenger said, two religions cannot coexist in the Arabian Peninsula. Umar investigated the matter, then sent to the Jews saying, Allah has given permission for you to be expelled. Pursuant these instructions, the Arabian followers of Muhammad unto this day consider the Arabian Peninsula a sacred land not to be polluted by any and all other religions, which are not allowed to practice their faith under any circumstances unless they do it in private and in specially enclosed areas. So much for the alleged tolerant and peaceful characteristics of Muhammadan Islam that they repeatedly ram down our throat in spite of facts and reality. Muhammadan Islam is intolerant, racist, discriminatory, immoral, and unjust, and no one can dispute these assertions based entirely upon their books, facts, and reality.